Stripped down, sleek, and aggressive, the Streakfly is supposed to be Nike's best runner in years. Does it live up to the hype? Let's find out. So why did Nike feel like they needed to make a shoe specific to mid-distance road races? Well, if you watch my video on the Alphafly, one of the issues that I had with that shoe was it was so tall that it really felt unstable around turns and on uneven pavement. And I must have not been the only one with that complaint, because this shoe is really a direct response to that. In fact, if there's a theme to this shoe, it's that everything is stripped down and simplified. You can start by looking at the midsole. This shoe has 16 millimeters less foam than Nike's thickest running shoes. It also does not have a full-length carbon plate. It has what Nike is calling a midfoot shank. It runs from around here to here and looks like a big tongue depressor. The theme of simplification carries over to the outsole of the shoe as well. We see the basic geometry of all of Nike's super shoes. The really wide landing pad in the front, the exposed foam with the rubber inserts in the heel, and the aerodynamic tail. But everything's just been taken back a step. This typical torus shape in the back has really been subdued. The divot here is more of a suggestion of a shape rather than the deep cuts that you see in a lot of Nike's racing shoes. The midfoot is flat. Oftentimes with a lot of Nike's super shoes there's a step here. This really is more of a move towards a real racing flat than some of Nike's other shoes are. Nike describes the upper material as an engineered mesh, so I think it's safe to assume it's not Flyknit. It's definitely not the Atom knit you see on their top end shoes, but the execution is pretty much the same. You have this thin see-through material for most of the upper, rubberized material as a toe bumper, and on the Achilles you have the cushion that locks your foot in. If you're used to the feel of Flyknit where you tighten the laces and the whole upper seems to close on your foot as one unit, you might notice a little bit of a difference here, but I think this upper works really well. My favorite feature of it is this little pull tab. This is a throwback to some of Nike's earliest running shoes. The early Cortez, the Waffle Racers all had these throw tabs to help you get the shoe on. I'm a sucker for shoes with pull tabs, especially like the little checkered flag graphic on it. So that really made me smile when I saw it. So that's the shoe. There's not a whole lot to describe here because there's not a whole lot here. This is about as simplified and stripped down you can get and still have a high-tech racer. So I'm excited to get this out on the road and see how it performs. So we're back to lovely Jones Island for this flat-out half mile. Excited to see how the Streakfly stacks up against some of the other shoes that we've tested out here. So the last time out here we covered the distance in the Alphafly in 3 minutes 5 seconds. I'm excited to see what the Streakfly can do. It feels like a faster shoe, but the thing about that Alphafly is it was so smooth it never felt fast, it just was fast. With the Streakfly you definitely feel the speed, you definitely feel the work a lot more going into the run, and I'm excited to see how those two will compare. At these higher paces you start to notice that midfoot shank that I talked about. It's not there the same way a full-length carbon plate would be, but it does give you some snapback. My guess is Nike went with that smaller carbon piece as a cost-saving measure. These shoes retail at $160, which is over $100 less than Nike's top-end shoes. And at that price, there's going to be some compromise in the materials, so the reduction in carbon, the lack of Flyknit, all makes sense. I do have an older pair of Zoomx Fly FKs. Now those do have the Flyknit and the full-length carbon, but their compromise is that they use the React foam rather than the Zoomx. I much prefer the Streakfly approach to it. I'd rather give up those other things and keep the Zoomx foam. It's so much better than the React foam. Overall, I just love the approach to the shoe that the Streakfly brings to it. Coming about halfway point here at 1:15. That's pretty similar to the open pace that I ran in the Alphafly. So we'll see what happens over this last half of the race here. Entering into the third quarter of the race here, and this is always the point where I suffer a bit. First half of the race is easy because you're fresh, and last quarter of the race you're kicking for home. But this middle section you can really kind of lose the plot a little bit. It's really where it takes focus. And this is where I think maybe the Alphaflys were a little bit of a better shoe. The rebound, the cushion from that shoe really helped drive you when you were feeling fatigued. With the Streakfly, it's all you. You really have to generate the power. In some ways, though, I think that helps because you're more in tune to the pace that you're running. Alpha flies were so insulated, you could really lose a feel for how fast you were running and drift off the pace a little bit if you weren't really focused. And so far, I'm loving the way these shoes are performing. Again, just enough rebound, enough energy return from the Zoomx foam and the carbon, but you feel the road, you feel the pace. I've always liked shoes where you get that feedback, and I think the balance is just right in these shoes. Good amount of feedback, good amount of cushioning. Trying to turn it on here for the last 200 meters or so, looking for that final little bit of a kick. And this is tough. It's a cold day out here, much colder than when I ran in the Alpha Fly, only about 40 degrees. It was a struggle to warm up, but once I get into the run, this pace is actually quicker than it was in the Alpha Fly. We're coming up to the finish line right now. 2:56, 9 seconds quicker than the Alpha Fly. Let's test these shoes out in what they were made for, 5K. If you remember from the Alpha Fly video, this course is actually about 400 meters short of a 5K. So the times are not absolute, but they are going to be good for points of comparison. Now coming around this downhill and into this sharp turn here, this is where I really struggled with the Alpha Fly. With the height, it was tough to negotiate this turn at speed. Much smoother in the Streakfly, able to navigate that turn and settle into pace on the straight. Coming around this sweeping turn under the Hone Bridge, this was another point with the Alpha Fly where I really had to be careful with that broken pavement. I had to really pick my steps carefully. I was always a little concerned about rolling my ankle. Much smoother, much more confident in the Streak Flies. Coming down through Lakeshore State Park, one of my favorite places in the city with the Milwaukee skyline in the background. Just a beautiful place to run, nice sweeping turns, beautiful scenery. Exiting the park here, next we'll wrap around the art museum and stick right on the lake coast as we head out to that final pier. Is the beautiful Calatrava designed art museum. We've got a sharp right hand turn coming up, and then we basically head out into the lake to the finish line. Here's the final turn onto this jetty, about 150 meters or so to go to the end and the finish line, trying to get that last bit of kick in, and we cross the line. Let's look at the time. Streakfly finished the race 20 minutes, 6 seconds. Now again, this is not a full 5K, but for point of comparison, the Alpha Fly did it in 20:43, so Streakfly 37 seconds faster. Very impressive for a shoe that's $100 less than the Alpha Fly. So I love this shoe. I've always loved low profile runners. I've never been able to go full minimalist because I strike the ground too hard for a real barefoot running shoe. And this shoe just strikes the perfect balance between cushioning and responsiveness to the ground. It really feels to me kind of like those old school runners, the nylon and suede ones from the 80s, updated with the best technology available. It's a great shoe. It's the best shoe I've worn in years. It's got me back into road running in a way that I haven't in a very long time. This is a terrific shoe. It's one of my favorite shoes I've ever run in.